Hello, Hidden Gems. We are live. Thank you for your patience. And thank you actually for your patience for 24 hours because I know that last night we have been doing lives every night and we missed day 7, Wednesday. And there's also day 8, Thursday today. So we're going to cover all of it because so much has happened, actually, so much. We heard from, on day 7, we heard from the nanny, Elaine or Laney. Heartbreaking. And then today was even more heartbreaking because we learned about Callan and his autopsy. We heard from Patrick Clancy's father, the preschool teachers. And a lot of people actually are discussing right now, those that have been watching the trial live streamed, confused because they feel like the prosecution might be bringing a lot of witnesses that are actually helping the defense. And I have to admit, an opinion here before we jump into just everything that happened bit by bit in trial. I kind of agree. But I would love to know what all of you think. Maybe we can throw a poll in there. But thank you for being with us today. As many of you know, the Hidden True Crime team unexpectedly is dealing with a tragedy. Our wonderful producer, who is a big part of this show and this podcast, lost her brother unexpectedly and is going through a very difficult time. She's still here with me in Massachusetts, and there's been a lot of questions as to why. And it's because her parents are not in town. Her family is actually where this accident occurred, and there is no one for her to go home or fly home to right now. So she is safe here. She also didn't want to jump on a plane alone, learning the tragic news. And so, for those questions and rumors out there, she is staying put because this is where she feels safest and what she wants to do. And as soon as she can, she will be on a plane home to be with her family. So, thank you, everybody, for your well wishes for Grace. All right. Let's jump in because there is a lot to cover. And thank you, everyone, for being here. The first witness of yesterday, Wednesday, we'll call it day 7. And so we're referring to day 7 now, and we'll call it the day. So we're on Wednesday. The first witness of the day was Aiton Negri. And Aiton Negri is a physician assistant working in the trauma burn surgical ICU at Brigham and Women's. And he is the one who treated Lindsay Clancy on January 25th, 2023. He'd taken over her care that morning, reviewed the prior shifts and notes, examined her, and handled the parts of her treatment that fell within his role. The injuries that he personally managed were specifically Lindsay's wrist lacerations. Thank you. Finally, we get the person on this end, right, who understands the lacerations on her wrist that the prosecution continues to bring up again and again and again, trying to explain that these are superficial wounds. So here we have the doctor that treated them. Finally, he explained that both of Lindsay's wrists had multiple cuts. On the right side, one wound was deep enough to require sutures, about 3 centimeters, and he closed it with 3 stitches. Okay, so that's a little different than all the other witnesses saying that they were just superficial cuts. He actually stitched one of these cuts up with 3 stitches, but the remaining cuts were superficial and treated with steri strips. The left wrist was similar but less severe, 1 2-centimeter cut that needed a single suture, so there's another stitch, and the rest closed with steri strips. None of the wounds went beyond the fatty layer under the skin, and none required a surgeon. He didn't treat her again after that shift. On cross-exam, Reddington discussed the condition Lindsay was in. He asked whether Negri was suggesting that Lindsay could have simply gotten up and walked out after he stitched her wounds, and the doctor said no, absolutely not. Reddington followed that by confirming she was critically ill when he saw her, and the doctor agreed. From there, Reddington moved into the medical records. He asked whether he knew Dr. Jeffrey Anderson, one of the trauma surgeons and ICU attendings that night. And he said that, yes, he did know him. And Reddington asked if he had reviewed records and photos with prosecutors. He said he had only reviewed his own procedure notes documenting the laceration repairs. So Reddington pressed him on the details of those wounds, and he referenced a note describing a 3.5 centimeter deep laceration. Excuse me. And I see here, thank you. A 3.5 centimeter deep laceration on the right wrist and a 2 centimeter deep laceration on the left. And it was explained that in his own note, he didn't specify volar aspect, but he did document that one of the lacerations he repaired was about 3 centimeters deep. Some were superficial, but not all. Reddington pointed out that prosecutors had asked him about superficial. And the doctor acknowledged that. Then Reddington circled back to Dr. Anderson's notes, asking whether Nagy agreed with the assessment of the deep lacerations on both wrists, and he said yes. And once the wound discussion wrapped, Reddington moved into the bigger picture, the injuries that had nothing to do with this specific doctor's role. He asked whether he had anything to do with the massive transfusion that Lindsay had received, the blood transfusion. He said no. He asked whether he treated her transected spine or the shattered vertebrae. Again, no. He asked whether he inserted the chest tubes that were draining blood from her thoracic cavity. He said he didn't place them, but he did manage them afterward. Reddington asked whether he knew where the blood was coming from. He said he'd have to refer back to imaging. And then Reddington brought up the moment Lindsay coded. He was not present for that, but he explained what coding meant. Excuse me. He explained what coding meant. Her heart had stopped. In other words, her heart had stopped, crash teams intervened, and she was successfully revived. And by the end of the cross, Reddington summed up his involvement. He handled the wrist lacerations and managed the chest tubes after they were inserted. He agreed, adding that he continued helping with her care throughout the day, not just with the major interventions Reddington had listed. Reddington thanked him, and that was the end of the cross. But wait for it, there is redirect. So, on redirect, Prosecutor Buckingham clarified that the term deep in the medical notes referred to the direction of the cut, how far down it went, not the severity. He confirmed that. She also asked whether he knew Dr. Anderson had examined the wrist injuries the night before and noted that they didn't require repair at the time. He just didn't recall. So up next on the stand was Nicholas Roberts. He explained that he worked for Thermo Fisher, but before that, he had spent 9 years in the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab's toxicology unit. By early 2023, he was a forensic scientist responsible for reviewing data and writing final toxicology reports. He described the lab's batch process. Multiple analysts ran different tests, and the reporting analyst pulled everything together at the end. He said the lab could only quantify certain drugs in-house. Anything outside their capabilities went to NMS labs. And in Lindsay Clancy's case, he was the reporting analyst. Blood, plasma, and urine were submitted. He personally ran the alcohol screen, which was negative. Alyssa's screens for benzodiazepines were positive in both blood and urine, triggering confirmatory testing. The general unknown screen also detected several substances. Roberts confirmed that 5 benzodiazepines were present. It was diazepam, nordiazepam, oxazepam, temazepam, and lorazepam. Grayson, again, oxazepam, nordiazepam, oxazepam, temazepam, and lorazepam. Those were the 5. He said the levels were simply reportable, nothing stood out. Other drugs detected included mirtazapine, lamotrigine, quetiapine, and quetiapine metabolite, and trazodone. So those could not be quantified at the state lab, so they were sent to NMS, and he explained that all of these drugs fell into the central nervous system depressant category. He also clarified that seeing multiple PAMs, all of those PAMs, it doesn't necessarily mean multiple medications. Several were metabolites of diazepam. So in other words, they metabolized into what diazepam simply is. So during cross-exam, Reddington focused on what the blood sample represented. Robert said multiple tubes were submitted, but he didn't know whether they were drawn all at once or over time. Either way, he knew that the blood belonged to Lindsay. Reddington asked whether this was a large number of substances in one sample. Robert said that he had seen more in other cases, but yes, it was still quite a few. Reddington pressed the point that Roberts had no way of knowing which drugs were prescribed. Roberts agreed. They revisited metabolites again, and Roberts explained that parent drugs break down into detectable components over time, which is why multiple related substances can appear in a single blood draw. Reddington finished by asking about THC. Roberts said none of that was detected, no marijuana, and that ended the cross-exam, and there was no redirect this time. Next on the stand was Dr. Jonathan Brower, who worked as a forensic toxicologist at NMS Labs, a national reference lab that handles postmortem toxicology, clinical testing, and forensic drug analysis. His job was to review each case in full, the specimen details, the drugs tested, the concentrations, and all of the raw data produced by other analysts in the batch workflow. For Lindsay Clancy's case, NMS received specimens on April 7th, 2023, submitted by the Plymouth County District Attorney's Office, and the request wasn't for a broad panel. It was targeted testing for 4 drugs: lamotrigine, mirtazapine, quetiapine, and trazodone. So Brower confirmed that all 4 were detected in her blood and listed the concentrations. He explained their common names and uses: Lamictal, Remeron, Seroquel, and Trazodone, all prescription medications typically used for mood disorders, seizures, or sleep. He said quetiapine was the only level slightly above what he had expected for prescribed use, but still nowhere near toxic or suicidal ranges. And in overdose cases, quetiapine levels were often around 10,000 nanograms per milliliter, far higher than the 1800s seen here. Brower also reviewed the benzodiazepines detected by the state lab, diazepam and its metabolites, nordiazepam, oxazepam, and temazepam plus lorazepam, all the PAMs. And he said the diazepam level looked subtherapeutic, and lorazepam could be therapeutic or slightly low depending on dose. He emphasized that toxicology couldn't be interpreted in isolation. Numbers alone did not tell the full story. In any case, postmortem or clinical context mattered. Symptoms, history, scene findings, and medical information. He had none of that here. His opinions were based solely on the specimen data. Brower said the 4 drugs tested were all CNS depressants. In high doses or in combination, they could slow respiration, but based on the levels he saw, he could not say that they would cause someone to stop breathing. He also confirmed Narcan had no effect on any of these substances because none acted on opioid receptors. During cross-examination, Reddington focused on Brower's point that numbers alone were incomplete. Brower agreed. Reddington noted that prosecutors could have provided background, such as Lindsay's fall and wrist injuries. And Brower said that in rare, high-profile cases, labs sometimes did receive that kind of information, though it wasn't required for testing. Reddington then walked through each quantified drug. Lamotrigine was mid-therapeutic. Mirtazapine was therapeutic. Trazodone was therapeutic. Quetiapine was somewhat elevated, but still far below toxic levels. Brower explained the units, nanograms per milliliter, and confirmed that all 4 drugs required prescriptions. He had no information about whether Lindsay had prescriptions or who might have written them. But on redirect, Buckingham asked Brower to confirm that he authored the corrected report once he received the case. He said yes, and the corrected report was admitted. After that, the judge explained to the jury some more things the defense was stipulating to. Take a listen. We have that right here.
So, members of the jury, remember, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I talked a little bit about those stipulations. So the same instructions. These are facts that I'm going to read that the parties have agreed to, that you can rely on in arriving at your verdict at the end of this case. These stipulations, this is one of 4 that was just introduced. You'll have all 4 of them with you back in the jury room when you're deliberating. But so let me just read this one stipulation. This doesn't mean this stipulation is any more important than any of the other ones, but the parties would like me to just read this one here. All right, so this is a stipulation regarding the DNA comparisons for the blue exercise band and the red-brown stain. It was marked A. Now, in the above captioned matter, the parties agree to the following facts as it pertains to the DNA comparisons for the blue exercise band and the red-brown stain A in the basement. Number 1, forensic scientist Emily Oliver reviewed and interpreted the data relating to the question items, parentheses, item 2-4, blue exercise band, and item 3-3, the red-brown stain A from the basement floor, close parentheses, and conducted comparison analysis to the known standards in this case. Number 2, the parties agreed to the following conclusions regarding comparison analysis of these items. A, item 2-4.1.1, sample from the ends of the blue exercise band. The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors. There are 5 individuals who have a likelihood ratio that indicates an inclusion in the profile. They are Dawson Clancy, Callan Clancy, Cora Clancy, Lindsay Clancy, and Patrick Clancy. B, item 2-4.2.1, sample from the middle of the blue exercise band. The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture of 3 contributors. Callan Clancy is included as a major contributor. And C, item 3-3.1, sample of swabs from the red-brown stain A on the basement floor. The DNA profile was interpreted as originating from a single contributor. Cora Clancy is included as a contributor to this DNA profile. So that's the stipulation that the parties have agreed to. All right.
And one last stipulation to be marked as the next exhibit, the stipulation regarding the batch work done at NMS Labs. We're not asking that this be read at this time.
All right.
The next witness was Katerina Stashin, and she told the jury she had a biotechnology background and currently worked as a criminalist in Nevada, but in January 2023, she was a forensic scientist in the DNA unit at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab. Her job was to process evidence, generate DNA profiles, interpret mixtures, and write reports. She had passed all competency and proficiency testing. She explained DNA in simple terms, inherited from both parents, consistent across cell types, and unique enough to identify individuals. She walked through the standard 4-step process that the lab used: extraction, quantification, amplification, and detection. All controls in this case were acceptable, and her work passed both technical and administrative review. Sprague then moved into the evidence she actually handled: swabs taken from the yellow exercise band and black exercise band, plus swabs from stains on the exterior house shingles. She compared all results to known DNA standards from Dawson, Cora, Callan, Patrick, and Lindsay Clancy. On the ends of the yellow exercise band, she found a mixture that included male DNA. Because multiple first-degree relatives were involved, she evaluated the profile under 2 possible contributor counts. Assuming 2 contributors, Dawson was strongly supported as a contributor. Cora, Callan, Patrick, and Lindsay were excluded. Assuming 3 contributors, Dawson again has strong support. The others were excluded as contributor 1. She explained that relatedness can complicate mixture interpretation. Relatives share so much DNA that it can affect contributor counts and likelihood ratios. Under both interpretations, though, Dawson had strong inclusionary support. In the middle of the yellow exercise band, there was a 2-person mixture with male DNA. Likelihood ratios support inclusion for Dawson, Callan, and Patrick. Cora and Lindsay were excluded, but she emphasized that although 3 individuals had inclusionary support, they could not all be present together under a 2-contributor assumption. Shared DNA among relatives was causing the overlap. So on the ends of the black exercise band, this profile was too complex to interpret, likely 5 or more contributors. Lab protocols required stopping analysis at that point. And for the middle, there was a 3-person mixture with male DNA. Likelihood ratio supported Dawson, Cora, Callan, Patrick, and Lindsay. Very limited support. She clarified that likelihood ratios are calculated independently. They don't mean all supported individuals could be present together. Again, relatedness made interpretation difficult. The exterior house shingles. So 3 stains, B, C, and D, and then stain B and A, adding A to that mix. Single source, female profile. Strong support for Lindsay as a contributor. Everyone else excluded. Stain C, a mixture too low level to interpret. Stain D, another single source female profile. Strong support for Lindsay. Everyone else excluded. After that, there were no cross-examinations. The last witness of the day was Elaine Rossi. She told the jury that she had been a nanny for about 15 years. This was such a heartbreaking testimony. Watching this from inside the courtroom, she walked in, and she did look at Lindsay occasionally, I want to say, but she actually seemed to be trying not to as well. I think this was very hard for her to be testifying. She told the jury that she had been a nanny for about 15 years and that she had met the Clancy family in July 2022 after responding to Lindsay's Facebook post. Their first meeting was simply an introductory visit. She met the kids, spent time with them, and talked with both parents. Shortly afterward, she became their nanny. Her job mainly centered on baby Callan, though she did help with the older kids when they were home and pitched in with light chores. She worked 3 days a week, usually 8:30 to 1:30, and communicated with Lindsay through text and a notebook that Lindsay kept in the kitchen. We know about this notebook. Lindsay left those detailed instructions about Callan's feeding and sleep routine, which Rossi described as organized and appropriate. Rossi said that Lindsay was often out of the house, dropping the kids at school, working out, or running errands, and she saw her come and go throughout the day. She fed Callan bottles, took him for walks, and even drove the older kids to the toddler gymnastics class when Lindsay could not drive. Nothing about the home or Lindsay's behavior struck Elaine Rossi as unusual. And through the fall, Lindsay confided, though, to Elaine that she was dealing with postpartum issues. Take a listen.
Did you come to find out that Lindsay was having some issues?
I did.
Did she talk to you about that?
She did.
And what did she tell you about her issues?
She shared with me that she was suffering from postpartum.
Now, when she shared this information with you, had you noticed anything different about her demeanor or her presentation around the house?
I didn't at all.
Had her trips out of the house when you were there stopped or decreased during that time period?
No.
And did she tell you that at that time that she was seeing some doctors?
She did.
What about medication? Did you have any conversations with her about her taking medication during that time period?
I think we talked about she was going to stop a medication because she was trying to stop nursing.
That she was going to stop medication or she was going to start medication?
I think she was trying to stop something because she was going to, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Take your time.
she was not going to nurse Callan anymore because she was going to be starting a new medication.
Did she ever give you any details about the medication?
She didn't.
Do you recall seeing prescription bottles around the house?
I did.
Did you ever learn from Lindsay that she had gone to the emergency room in November of 2022?
No.
How about gone to the emergency room in December of 2022?
No.
Did anything about your arrangements with coming on the 3 days, caring for Callan and sometimes Cora, did any of that ever change because of what she reported to you about having postpartum?
Only at the end of my time with them.
Okay, we'll get there in a
Okay.
second. But did you have the occasion to observe her interacting with the children?
I did.
And did you have any concerns about her interacting with the children?
None at all. She was a wonderful mom.
Did she have any further conversation with you about maybe more specific sleep or sleep issues that she had been having during the time period you were nannying for them?
She did.
And what did she tell you about that?
She told me she was having difficulties sleeping and that she was sleeping in the basement.
Now, when you would watch Callan and she would be in the basement, would you often see her in the basement?
No.
And one of the things you said that you sometimes did was do some laundry, right?
I did.
And where was the laundry in the Clancy house?
It was in the basement.
And so you'd have to go through that living room area down there where the couch was to get back to the laundry room.
Yes, it was in the back.
How about working out in the basement? Do you recall if you went down the basement stairs to the right that there'd be like a little area where there'd be weights and that kind of thing? Did you ever see her working out there?
I don't recall if I did.
Okay. As far as the medications, do you recall where you observed the medications in the house?
Yes, they were in to the right of the refrigerator, I believe in a cabinet.
And you had to go into the Patrick and Lindsay's bedroom, right?
I did.
Fair to say Callan's crib was in there.
It was.
So do you recall ever seeing medications in the bedroom?
I didn't.
Now, you had mentioned that you knew Lindsay to be going back to work in November, correct? Were you advised or did you know that she was originally scheduled to go back in October, but then bumped it back to November?
I didn't know that.
But as you began working for them, that November date was in mind, right?
Yes.
Moving to Thanksgiving of 2022, did something change about the plan for her to go back to work?
Yes, I came in, I think it was a few days after Thanksgiving, maybe the day after Thanksgiving, and Lindsay was in the kitchen, and I had expected her to be asleep.
Why was that?
Because I thought she was working that shift, that Thanksgiving shift. And she told me that she wouldn't be going back to work.
And was there any further conversation of what the plan was for you and the family during that time period?
No, I think I mentioned if she wasn't going back to work and that if they didn't need me, if they could let me know.
Okay. And so do you recall being at the home at one point where Patrick and Lindsay left the house and came back?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that interaction?
Of course, Patrick and Lindsay went for a walk, and when they returned, I was in the living room on the floor with Callan, and they came in and told me that they would have to let me go because Lindsay would not be going back to work, and the two of them would be home to care for the children.
Okay. And so did they give you anything else, any other information about why Lindsay wasn't going back to work during that meeting?
No.
Okay. And did they give you some time to kind of make other arrangements after that?
They did. I believe they gave me 2 weeks.
And during that time after Thanksgiving, did you have the occasion to see Lindsay interacting with the kids in the home?
I did.
And was anything about your observations of her different?
Nothing.
Now, the kids themselves, you had the occasion to spend some time with Cora. And how would you describe Cora?
Oh, Cora was a girly girl who loved her babies very much. She was very sweet, and she loved arts and crafts and loved playing with her Fresh Mart, which was a little children's supermarket. She was lovely.
And Dawson, how about him? How would you describe him?
Dawson was full of energy, rambunctious, funny, silly.
Did you ever have any problem watching Dawson or keeping him under control? Or
Not at all. I was only with him on a handful of occasions.
did you ever see Dawson kind of interacting with his siblings, with Cora or with Callan?
I did.
And did you see anything, or could you tell us a little bit about Dawson's interactions with them?
Cora and Dawson played well. There was one occasion in the kitchen where they were playing, and I think Cora took one of his Play-Doh, something. He was playing with Play-Doh, and his reaction, he was frustrated, and he reached out and slapped Callan.
Now, were you alone with the kids during this interaction, or was Lindsay present too?
Lindsay was, I think, in the kitchen at the same time.
Did you see her react to that when she saw that behavior?
She did.
And what was the reaction? What did she
She
do?
went over and removed Callan. She removed Dawson from the room and came back and consoled Callan.
Okay. And eventually, did you see her go back and kind of talk to Dawson about his behavior and address it? Okay. And was that appropriate in your opinion?
Of course, yes.
How about how you would describe Callan? How would you describe him? You spent the most time with him, correct?
I did. He was the happiest, sweetest, easiest baby. He was just a love.
Thank you. If Lindsay had told you in one of these exchanges, and again, you exchanged mostly either in this notebook or via text, right?
Correct.
If she told you about working out, do you know if she wasn't in the basement where she would go to work out?
I think it was the Kingsbury Club.
Okay. And as far as when you stopped working for them, do you remember exactly when it was? You said maybe 2 weeks after
I think
Thanksgiving.
it was December 8th or December 10th.
And in the time that you were with the Clancys in their households, caring for their kids, interacting with Patrick and Lindsay, did you ever have any concerns that the children were not safe?
No.
Thank you.
It was really sad. And Lindsay, yes, was crying during this emotional this testimony. And one thing that I want to point out that's really interesting for the jury, I've noticed a pattern with this jury. When they take a lot of notes. This jury takes a lot of notes, both the men and the women, and both during just questioning as well as cross-exam, both with the prosecution and the defense. But when there is a personal, more intimate witness on the stand, like someone that's not just an expert witness, they don't take as many notes. They'll watch Lindsay. So they watch her. And I think it's because ultimately at the heart of this trial, this is what I always say, this isn't a whodunit trial. They're not going to blame somebody else for killing the children. Lindsay says, I did this. She's stipulated to that. But it's a why done it trial, right? It's a why did this happen? And I think at the heart of that is, who is Lindsay Clancy? What's the intent? And so I think that the jury understands this, and they are trying to understand her. So when you have Elaine Rossi up, who says that she was called Lainey, that was her nickname, which also we understand some of Lindsay's journal entries now, they actually reference Lainey. That was the day before. Lainey, I spoke with Lainey, Lainey this. Now we know who Lainey is. It's Elaine Rossi, this woman. When she talks and when it's emotional and it's getting to know Lindsay and Lindsay's crying, the jury often switches from just simply taking notes to watching Lindsay a lot. They'll watch the witness, but they turn to see Lindsay's reaction, to see what Lindsay is doing. And I do believe that that's what the jury is trying to understand. Who is the real Lindsay Clancy? Anyway, it continues with the Laney testimony actually continues because Reddington gets up for cross-exam, and Reddington walks through the timeline, July through early December. And Elaine Laney confirms that they parted on wonderful terms. Texted Lindsay on Christmas, and Lindsay responded. She remembers being interviewed by state police on March 1st, 2023, and troopers asked about Lindsay's behavior and parenting. And she told them that Lindsay was a loving, doting mother. She explained that what she meant by that was attentive, careful, and focused on the children's routines. She did not find Lindsay's detailed instructions overbearing. They were simply helpful. Elaine confirmed Lindsay had talked about postpartum struggles, insomnia, and medication. She agreed that she had noticed Lindsay losing weight. She also said Lindsay responded to most of her texts and seemed appreciative of the updates that she sent about the kids. Reddington asked whether she remembered telling troopers she loved her Lindsay. She didn't recall saying it, but she did say she loved her, and she was very specific. I loved her, not loved her. It was past tense. On redirect, Sprague asked one question. In all of their conversations about both postpartum issues, sleep and medication, did Lindsay ever mention intrusive thoughts or thoughts of harming herself? Elaine said no. And after that, court ended for the day. And so now we are to today. And today means Thursday. And today means day 8 of the Lindsay Clancy trial. Prosecution still calling witness after witness after witness. I think it was a little bit strategic, by the way, of Reddington to have Lindsay stipulate to a bunch of additional facts in the middle of the trial to sort of like cut down the prosecution's witness list. Nonetheless, they are still going with their witnesses. There are a lot of witnesses. And today started, the first witness of the day was a very, very heartbreaking witness. It was a medical examiner, and honestly, it was brutal. Lindsay audibly sobbed throughout her testimony. And Lindsay, of course, had to look at her baby's autopsy. And she audibly sobbed. And by the way, I've seen another mother have to face her children's autopsy photos before. That was Lori Vallow. Lori's just simply wouldn't look, stared down, refused to see anything, asked to not be there. Lindsay, on the other hand, audibly sobbed. It was brutal. The witness introduced herself as Dr. Kimberly Springer. She worked at the office of the chief medical examiner in Boston and had been doing autopsies for about 20 years. She explained what an autopsy was, basically a full examination of the body, outside and inside, to determine the cause of death. She talked about measuring height and weight, looking for signs of medical treatment, trauma, disease, and then making surgical-like incisions to examine the organs. Then she started discussing January 29th, 2023, because that was the day that she performed 8-month-old Callan's autopsy. She said that she followed the standard procedure, external exam first and then internal. She said that Callan still had medical equipment attached, a thermometer in his left nostril, a feeding tube in the right, an endotracheal tube down his throat, a catheter, multiple IV lines in his hands, wrists, foot, and groin. She mentioned adhesive residue on his chest and needle marks from attempts to save him. She measured him 26 inches long, 24 pounds, and said that he had general edema, meaning his whole body was swollen from the fluids that he had been given in the hospital. And then ADA Sprague asked if she saw any injuries or trauma, and she said yes. And this is where the judge paused everything. He reminded the jury that the photos they were about to see would be disturbing, very disturbing. That they had to separate emotion from evidence, that they couldn't let sympathy or anger influence their verdict. It was one of those moments, again, where the judge's voice sort of gets low and very serious because he knows what's coming. And so do we, right? And when the photos came up, Dr. Springer walked the jury through them one by one. She pointed out abrasions in Callan's neck on the right side, the middle, the left. She explained that some of the marks were from medical treatment, but the linear abrasions around his neck were not. The state showed close-ups of the marks. Springer described them in inches and millimeters. She pointed out a pale line on his neck that was just a normal infant skin fold, making sure the jury didn't mistake it for an injury. And next they showed abrasions on his forehead, tiny ones, but still injuries. Springer pointed out petechial hemorrhages on his face and eyelids, little red dots under the skin. And she explained that petechi was when tiny blood vessels burst from pressure. This part was actually quite technical. So I'm going to hand this over to the medical examiner. Let's take a listen together.
And what are petechial hemorrhages?
Petechial hemorrhages occur when there is rupture of the small blood vessels underneath the skin surface, and they are from an overpressure of the small blood vessels such as capillaries or venules, and blood escapes out and makes a dot-like hemorrhage.
We could have photo 9954. If you could explain for us what we're seeing in this photograph, please.
In this photograph is Callan's right side, also showing the back of his neck. So that abrasion that could be seen in the first photo showing the front of his neck, that abrasion continues along about 3 inches in all toward the right posterior or back of the neck.
And if we could have photo 9955, please. Is this a close-up photograph of what you just described?
Yes, I can show that right here.
Thank you. Could we have photo 636, please? And if you could describe for us what you see here in this photo, Doc.
First the abrasion is in poor focus, but it's in the picture on the left side of the photograph, and then the most in the photograph, one can see those petechial hemorrhages better along the cheek, on the eyelid, all of those.
We could have photo 654, please. Can you describe what we're seeing in this photograph, Doctor?
Yes, this is an abrasion near the hairline on the right side of the forehead. And that is up here. That is about 3/8 by 1/8 inch.
And then photo 656, please. Can you describe what we're seeing in this photo here, Doctor?
This is looking at the top of Callan's head, and on the top right part of his head toward the front, near the forehead, is a 1/8 by 1/16 inch abrasion.
And then photo 657, please. You can describe what we're seeing here, Doctor?
This is the abrasion on the left side of his forehead with a ruler this time. In addition, the petechiae are also in pretty good focus on this.
And then photograph 9916. If you can describe for us what we're seeing in this photograph, please.
So these are some of the, I forgot to mention at the very beginning, there's a intravascular catheter in the right groin. This is Callan before we took off his medical therapy, and it shows some of the needle marks that he had. So on this is his right lower extremity. This is a look of an intraosseous catheter attempt with a central puncture mark and a round abrasion around it. And then here's the right groin line and the left foot line.
And if we could have photograph 9917. Are we seeing the same thing here on the left leg, those same IO attempt marks?
Exactly, yes.
Thank you. Doctor, are you able to date the wounds to the head, the abrasions and marks on the head? Are you able to say when those got there or how long they'd been there?
I can't precisely, but they have signs of healing in the form of scabbing.
And would that indicate that they weren't fresh wounds that happened the day you saw him or the day prior?
Correct.
In terms of the marks around Callan's neck and the petechiae around his eyes and face, did that give you an indication here of the mechanism of death for Callan?
Yes.
And how so?
So it is consistent with a ligature strangulation, given that the abrasions are linear around his neck and there are petechial hemorrhages above those lines of abrasion.
And how is it that when someone is strangled with a ligature, that causes petechiae in the face and eyes?
So what happens is that the blood vessels that supply blood to the neck are compressed. And so there are jugular veins, which are a lower pressure system, and carotid arteries, which are a somewhat higher pressure system. And so as the vessels are compressed, if there is a backup of blood in the head, there can be an increased pressure in those small blood vessels that I mentioned, and they can rupture, causing the petechiae.
But basically, is it similar to a balloon filling up, but it's not air, it's blood and pressure in the face?
Yes.
And so when that pressure gets too great, is it that the capillaries are basically bursting and causing those little red marks?
Yes. Most texts say capillaries, some say venules, the small blood vessels.
And how is it that this process, the strangulation by ligature, causes death physically? How does it physically happen?
So the blockage of blood, either both to and from the head or just from the head, will cause a lack of oxygen to arrive at the brain. And there can be an element of airway compression as well, such that the lungs can't oxygenate properly. So that lack of oxygen is what causes the brain to die and the organs to fail.
And based on your examination of Callan, did you come to a determination based on your training and experience to a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to the cause of his death?
Yes.
And what was that?
Complications of mechanical asphyxia.
And why is it complications of mechanical asphyxia instead of just the asphyxia itself?
Because he was resuscitated, and so his heart began to beat again. So from the 24th to the 27th, there was a continuation of support of his organs to in the hospital. And so if he had a stopped heart at the scene, and in that case I would have just said mechanical asphyxia, but since there was a 3-day hospital stay, I said complications of mechanical asphyxia.
So the word complications doesn't mean that something happened at the hospital to cause his death. It's just that the strangulation caused his death, but he didn't die for a few days.
Correct.
Commonwealth would move to submit the autopsy photos as the next exhibit.
Same objection. Same objection. They may be admitted.
Commonwealth would move to submit the death certificate of Lauren Clancy as the next exhibit.
That may be admitted.
I have nothing further.
Counsel? Thank you. All right. Thank you. You may step down, Doctor.
Thank you.
Counsel, can I see just briefly?
We just wanted to keep playing that for a bit to see inside the court room how that went. Yeah, she has definitely cried. I've explained Lindsay Clancy is either sort of a flat affect, nothing, or she's crying. She's typically actually flat affect, like kind of emotionless. When she does cry, those are the clips that everybody, plays and shares on YouTube, but it's not as often. And this was the hardest I've ever seen her cry. Looking at Callan's autopsy photos. So heartbreaking. She gave her official conclusion. She said the cause of death was complications of mechanical asphyxia. And she explained that one word, though, complications, was important. Complications was used, complications of mechanical asphyxia, because Callan had been resuscitated. His heart started beating again, right? And he lived for 3 days in the hospital. If he had died at the scene, she would have simply said mechanical asphyxia. But because of the prolonged treatment he received, it was complications from. Sprague clarified that complications didn't mean the hospital caused his death. It just meant the strangulation caused the fatal injury, but he didn't pass away until days later. They submitted the autopsy photos and the death certificate. The defense objected, but the judge admitted them. And after Sprague said she had nothing further, and the judge called for a recess. Lindsay was still crying as court officers wheeled her out of the room. And the next witness was Dr. Lindsay Rochert, a pediatrician who had treated all 3 Clancy children. So in other words, the family's pediatrician, the Clancy children's pediatrician. She worked at Quincy Pediatrics now, but back in 2023, she was at South Shore Medical Center where she had been for about 7 years. She said she'd been the Clancy family's pediatrician since around 2019. It was a big practice, so she did all the well visits, but if one of the kids was sick and she wasn't available, they might see another provider. She always had access to their records, though she reviewed everything at each checkup to stay updated. Sprague submitted the pediatric records for all 3 kids and then focused on Callan. Callan was born May 2022, and she had been his pediatrician from birth. She said there was nothing out of the ordinary with him. No health issues, no missed milestones, nothing concerning. She didn't remember Lindsay ever mentioning bottle feeding issues. She said Dawson was healthy except for a peanut allergy. Cora had asthma, but it was well controlled. All 3 kids were otherwise healthy. Then Sprague shifted to postpartum issues. As a pediatrician, Rochert said she was trained to look for signs in new moms, things like flat affect, so sort of emotionless, lack of eye contact, tearfulness, trouble bonding with the baby. If she saw anything concerning, she would document it and refer the mom to resources or back to her OB. She said she never saw any of those signs in Lindsay, nothing that made her think Lindsay needed postpartum support. Sprague walked her through the medical records so the jury would understand how they were structured. Rochert explained how she took histories. She relied on the parent, especially with babies who couldn't speak. If there were communication issues, she would document them. She said she never had trouble communicating with Lindsay. And then they moved to January 24th, 2023, the day of Cora's 5-year physical. Dr. Rochert said that she reviewed the chart beforehand, including a December visit where Cora had vomiting and a sore throat. If anything had concerned her, she would have addressed it with Lindsay. She said the January 24th visit was normal. Cora behaved like any kid at checkup. Not thrilled to be there, but she was just fine. Lindsay, she said, seemed appropriate. She answered questions clearly. She understood everything. She did not have a flat affect. There were no tears, no odd behavior, nothing that stood out. They talked about Cora's stomach aches. Dr. Rochert thought that constipation was likely, very common in kids. She recommended Miralax and told Lindsay to come back in 2 weeks if things did not improve. Lindsay was receptive. And on cross-exam, Reddington started by asking how long she had treated the Clancy kids. She said that she had been their pediatrician since around 2019 when Cora was about 9 months old. She confirmed that she saw all 3 children over the years. He asked who usually brought the kids to their appointments, and she said Lindsay almost always did. Patrick came once, but every other visit was Lindsay. And then he walked her through what pediatricians look for. They look for bruisings. They look for signs of neglect. They look for developmental issues, anything unusual. Rochert agreed that she always looked for those things. She never said she saw anything concerning on the Clancy kids. They were healthy. They were happy. He asked if Lindsay appeared to be a doting, concerned mother, and Rochert said, yes, Lindsay always seemed appropriate and caring. And then he went into the postpartum issues. He asked if someone could be suffering from postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis and still talk normally. Well, Rochert hesitated, and she said simply that she did not have enough expertise to answer that well. He asked if Lindsay ever complained about her kids or acted aggravated with them. She said no. And then he zoomed in on the timeline, 2022 into January 2023. He reminded her that the prosecutor had asked whether she saw any postpartum symptoms. She said she did not. And then he asked if she knew that Lindsay was seeing a psychiatrist in October of 2022, and she said no. Did she know Lindsay was prescribed Zoloft? No. Did she know Lindsay was seeing Dr. Paul, then a nurse practitioner named Gelada? No. Did she know anything about South Shore's mental health providers? No. Did she know Lindsay was on multiple medications? No. Did Lindsay ever tell her she had insomnia? No. Did she know Lindsay called the suicide hotline twice in December? No. Did she know Lindsay went to Mass General, then self-admitted to McLean on New Year's Eve? No. She said no to all of it. So Reddington made the point that she didn't know any of this because Lindsay wasn't a complainer. She didn't unload her struggles onto people. She didn't present as someone falling apart. He asked if Lindsay was a good mother. Dr. Rochert said she always thought that she was. And that was the end of cross-exam, no redirect. It was another witness, honestly, that made me question if this was more beneficial for the defense and the prosecution. Let me know what you guys think in comments, or again, maybe we can do a poll. The next witness was Susan Fravoni, and she worked at Learning Sprouts, a preschool and daycare that takes kids from about 15 months old to 5 years old. She taught the 3 and 4-year-olds. And back in January 2023, that was her classroom. Dawson Clancy was one of her students, and she said Dawson started in her class in September of 2022. She also knew Cora because the teachers rotated and helped in all of the rooms, so everyone got to know all of the children. She taught Dawson from September until she went in on maternity leave in November. And Sprague asked if there were any issues with Dawson during that time. She did say that Dawson started having harder drop-offs around mid-October. Sometimes that happens at that age, right? But she said it wasn't typical for Dawson. Before that, he had been pretty fine and okay with drop-offs. She said that the drop-offs were inconsistent. Some days were better, some were harder. After Susan had a baby and went on maternity leave, sometime around or after Thanksgiving, she saw Lindsay at the school when she was dropping off her older daughter, and she remembered asking Lindsay asking how her baby was and how she was doing. And she said Lindsay's demeanor was fine, nothing different. Lindsay understood her. She understood Lindsay. She had no concerns, and that was the last time she ever saw Lindsay. Sprague pointed out that Susan was a mandated reporter, so she agreed to that. And so if she had seen anything concerning about Dawson, the parents or the family, she would have absolutely had to report it. She said she never made any reports. Lindsay never mentioned insomnia or depression or anything like that. On cross-exam, Reddington asked how long she had known the Clancy family. And she said she started at Learning Sprouts in November 2020 when Cora was in preschool. So she had seen the kids regularly for years. He asked what a drop-off meant, and she explained that it was when parents brought the kids in for school. A difficult drop-off meant the child might cling or cry, and sometimes the parent cried too. She said Dawson had some difficult drop-offs, meaning he cried. She said she saw Patrick more often during those moments, but not Lindsay. He asked if Dawson seemed healthy, happy, and engaged. She said yes. Same with Cora. And that was it. No redirect. The next witness was Susan Bertolo, and she worked at Leaping Frogs Preschool. But before that, she spent 4 years at Learning Sprouts in Duxbury. She taught the older preschool group there, the 3 to 5-year-olds, the room they called the Sunflower Group. She explained how the classrooms were divided by age, toddlers, younger preschool, older preschool, and her group was the Sunflowers. She walked through what a typical day looked like. Some kids arrived early at 8, but most came in around 9:14. Some stayed half day, some stayed full day. She primarily worked with the morning group. When kids arrived, parents dropped them off at the door, and she or her coworker Karen would bring them inside. The kids stayed in the Sunflower Room through the morning, and the ones who stayed for the afternoon went across the hall to the Sweet Pea Room with another teacher named Stephanie. She said that she knew Cora Clancy. Cora was in the Sunflower Room with her. So in September 2022, Cora came 3 days a week. At first, she was half day. Then she moved to full day. And toward the end, she did one half day again. So Susan interacted with her at least 3 mornings a week. And then Cora would go to the Sweet Pea Room in the afternoons. She said that she and Karen handled drop-offs. Both Lindsay and Patrick dropped Cora off, though she remembered seeing Patrick more often. She said she also interacted with parents through email and through their class app, Class Doja. And she said that Lindsay was the more responsive parent on the app. When asked how Cora was as a preschool student, she said Cora was amazing. That was the word she used. Wonderful. And absolutely ready for kindergarten. So heartbreaking that she never made it there. And then she was asked about January 23rd, 2023. She remembered Cora coming in that day, so the day before the killings. She remembers Cora coming in that day. She didn't remember which parent dropped her off, but she did notice something different that day. Cora needed to use the bathroom several more times than usual. She explained that their classroom did not have a bathroom, so they normally went at scheduled times. And if a child needed to go outside those times, one of the teachers would take them. And that day, Cora asked to go several extra times, which stood out. She said Cora did not complain of belly pain, but the bathroom trips were so unusual, they were unusual enough that she passed the information along to Stephanie in the Sweet Pea Room so it could be relayed to the parents. And that afternoon, Susan happened to still be at the school helping in the toddler room, so she was there during pickup. She saw Lindsay and spoke with her briefly. She told her about the extra bathroom trips. Lindsay already knew and said that Cora had a doctor's appointment the next day and would mention it. Susan said the interaction was brief and appropriate. She said she didn't notice anything different about Lindsay during that conversation. She confirmed she was a mandated reporter and had never made any reports about the Clancy family. She also remembered Cora mentioning at some point, though, that her mom was in the hospital and that she missed her. I'm sure referring to the inpatient time that Lindsay spent in the hospital wanting to get home for Cora's birthday. She couldn't remember if that was in December or January, just that it was closer to the end of the school year. She confirmed that by January 2023, Cora was coming 3 full days and 1 half day each week. And after that, there was no cross-examination. The next witness on the stand was Stephanie Williams. And she was a pre-K teacher at Learning Sprouts Children's Center in Duxbury. She worked there for about 6.5 years and generally taught the pre-K kids, the 4-year-olds who were getting ready for kindergarten. She explained that the rooms at Learning Sprouts had names. She currently works in the Sweet Pea classroom. And when she first started, she worked in the Orange classroom. This break focused on the fall of 2022 into January 2023, and she confirmed she was in the Sweet Pea room during that time. She said she was the only teacher in that room and that it was a full-day program. Some of the 4 and 5-year-olds only came to her room in the afternoons. In the mornings, those kids were in the Sunflower class, which was more academic. The Sweet Pea room in the afternoon was more relaxed, outside play, rest, snack, and then coloring or artwork if there was time. So she said the afternoon kids stayed until 4, which was pickup time. She knew Cora Clancy. She had been Cora's teacher when she first started at Learning Sprouts when Cora was 3. And then from September 2022 into January 2023, Cora came to her classroom in the afternoons. And at first it was 3 afternoons a week, and then it switched to 4. When Cora arrived in the afternoon, she usually came in right before rest time. She was brought upstairs by one of the Sunflower teachers, either Susan or Karen. Stephanie described Cora and Cora's. Listen to this. So Cora is described by her teacher as a sweet little girl who loved her little brother. She loved to draw, play with baby dolls, and pretend to be princesses. And she especially loved Princess Sophia. Stephanie said she knew that because Cora talked about it all the time. And she even bought her a Princess Sophia puzzle. Sprague asked about January 23rd, 2023. Stephanie said Cora came to her classroom that afternoon, and the Sunflower teachers had already told her that Cora wasn't feeling well. Stephanie said she noticed it too. Cora napped, and when the other kids got up to get ready to leave, Cora was reluctant to get off her cot. She was still lying there when Lindsay came to pick her up. Stephanie said that Cora told her her tummy hurt, so she let her rest. She said Lindsay picked her up that day. Normally, parents came to the classroom door and the children would be sent out. Her classroom had a door that led directly outside, and on that day, Lindsay came to the door, and Stephanie told her that Cora had napped, wasn't feeling well, and had stayed on her cot. Lindsay came inside, picked Cora up, and said, listen to this quote, "Oh, baby, come on. Let's go get Dawson and we'll go home." Stephanie said Lindsay hadn't picked Dawson up yet and went upstairs afterwards. She said she didn't notice anything different about Lindsay during that interaction. She said that from September 2022 to January 23rd, she never noticed anything different about Lindsay at all. She described her as a very loving mother who cared about her children. She said Lindsay never shared anything about her family or anything happening at home. She confirmed she was a mandated reporter and never had concerns or made reports about the Clancy family. No cross-exam. I don't think there needed to be a cross-exam because she painted the picture of Lindsay as a very loving mother. And the next witness was Andrea Hennigan. a registered nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital. She has worked in labor and delivery for 25 years, and when asked if she was trained in recognizing postpartum issues, she explained that she did not have formal training in postpartum depression. She mostly saw women before birth and in the first 2 hours afterward. And if a patient came back during the postpartum period with concerns, the nurses screened the postpartum depression. She said all the nurses asked standard admission questions about depression, anxiety, or any feelings of wanting to harm themselves or others. If a patient said yes to any of those questions, she said they would talk more about the symptoms, alert the doctor or midwife, and get social work involved. Hennigan worked with Lindsay Clancy the entire time. Lindsay was on their unit, which she believed was 7 years. Lindsay worked in labor and delivery. She said they occasionally socialized outside of work. Hennigan saw Lindsay twice between Callan's birth in May 2022 and January, once in June, once in November. They also texted in June. She visited Lindsay at her home, brought lunch, and saw Lindsay, the baby, Patrick, and Dawson. She said Lindsay's demeanor was very good, and she was her typical self. The visit lasted about 2 hours. It's interesting learning about friends of Lindsay's and coworkers now. We've wondered, where is her village? Who are her friends? Here they are. We're learning. The next time that she saw Lindsay was in November at a restaurant in Hingham, and Lindsay talked about issues with sleep and anxiety. She said Lindsay did not remember exact symptoms, but the conversation was about Lindsay's upcoming return to work. Lindsay felt that she wasn't in a mental state to take care of patients. She talked about insomnia and not feeling herself. Andrea believed that Lindsay used the words brain fog. Take a listen.
When you were discussing these issues with Lindsay about having some insomnia and being concerned about going back to work, did you give her any advice or do anything to help?
Yes, it was myself and 2 other nurses that we work with who Lindsay was friends with outside of work, and we were all encouraging her to get the help and support that she needed with medication if needed, and therapists, and giving her any ideas we could think of in our personal and professional lives that may help her.
And did Lindsay tell you that she was looking to find some type of medication that would help her sleep and help her with her anxiety?
Yes, I believe we talked about medication, and she was going to be meeting with a new therapist shortly.
And during this conversation or after it happened, did you ever have any concerns about her harming herself?
No.
Did you ever have any concerns about her harming the children?
No.
Did you give her some names of obstetrics or social workers?
I did. After our lunch, I recall that I reached out to another friend of mine who had a pregnancy loss that was challenging for her and had met with obstetrical specific social workers and support groups. And I asked that woman, could you share those names? And I sent them to Lindsay.
Did you have some text messages between yourself and Lindsay around Thanksgiving of 2022 in which she told you about a program she was going to try?
We did have text messages around Thanksgiving. I believe the program you're referring to was something that her mother-in-law had told her about at South Shore Hospital that was more specific to perinatal issues rather than a general social worker, someone who specialized in this area.
What does perinatal mean?
During pregnancy, birth, and after birth.
So this was a program more focused on women either during their pregnancy, while birth, during birth, or right after birth, as far as you know?
I mean, as far as I understood it, I just understood it to mean someone who was familiar more with postpartum depression or anxiety was my understanding.
Okay. And did you also receive some text messages from Lindsay Clancy right after New Year's on January 2nd, 2023?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell us what that exchange was?
Again, that was with myself and Lindsay and the two other nurses who she had confided in. And we asked her how her holidays were and could we get together again in the new year. And she said, I can't get together right now because I'm involved in an intensive program, but hopefully soon.
Okay. And did she wish you a happy new year?
She may have, I do not recall.
And did she tell you that she was in fact at that time at McLean Hospital, or did she just leave it more vague that it was just an intense program?
I believe it was an intense program. I did not know the name of the facility at that time.
Did you at that time know that she was currently at a hospital?
I don't recall what I knew then versus what I know now.
Did you also speak with Lindsay on January 23rd, 2023?
I did not speak to Lindsay. I sent her a text message on January 23rd.
And what did you say in your text message?
I'm paraphrasing, but I believe I said, hi, I've been thinking of you, wondering if you're still in the daily program, I believe I said. So maybe I didn't realize it was inpatient. And she responded.
And what was her response?
Again, I'm paraphrasing, but she said something like, I'm no longer in the program. I'm continuing to work with my psychiatrists to find the right medication that will allow me to sleep at night but still function during the day. I've had a lot of bad or negative side effects from the medication, so I've had to come off of them and go on new ones, and it's been very difficult. Okay. Or has taken a long time or something like that.
Okay. And after those text messages that were exchanged on the 23rd, did you have any concerns that she was going to harm herself?
No.
The tone of the text messages, were they more positive and hopeful that things were going to work out on the right medications?
I don't know that they were more positive than previous times. I believe that Lindsay was always hopeful that she would get the care that she was seeking. So I don't know that the tone was different that day.
But it wasn't a negative tone. It was that same kind of hopeful tone.
Yes, as far as I remember.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Katrina Reddington. Morning.
Good morning.
So even during the, let's say the difficult times that she had, she was always trying to be hopeful and always tried to have a positive outlook on her health.
That was my impression, yes.
And you obviously are a good friend.
Yes, I believe so.
And you've known her for what, 7 years? 9 years now, right?
Yes, I believe since 2015, if that's when she began working at Mass General.
Right. So she was like a 24-year-old kid when she first started there, right?
Yes.
And you basically knew her right out of nursing school all the way up through
yes.
till she finally had the baby, the last baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us, what was her work ethic? Was she a good nurse? Was she a caring nurse? Tell us what your observations were. Granted that you're a friend and you might be biased, but tell us what you thought.
Yes. Lindsay loved being a nurse and was excellent at it. It was a second degree for her to go to nursing school. And you could tell with Lindsay, it was more of a calling that she really cared so deeply, specifically about caring for pregnant women and women giving birth. She was very attentive to all of her patients' needs. She was very smart. And mostly she was incredibly nurturing and caring.
Thank you. And during the period of time in the fall of 2022 up through Thanksgiving of 22 and then into 23, you obviously, as a good friend, stayed in close contact with her, texting, seeing her, dinner, lunches, and everything, right?
Yes.
And then when you and some of the other nurses would go to a lunch, for example. If I understand correctly, on one of the luncheons that you had in the fall of 22, she was telling or sharing with you the fact that she was going through a difficult period.
Yes.
Told you that she was not in a good mental state, that she had a lot of insomnia, and she even described it as brain fog, right?
Yes, I believe so. She definitely used those words in our text messages, as the fall progressed, but I believe she used those words during the lunch. She definitely said that she was in a difficult mental place and didn't think she'd be able to go back to work.
And she told you that she was actually actively treating with medical personnel. Did she say a psychiatrist, psychologist, or just seeing doctors, or what did she say?
Yes, she talked about therapists. She talked about going on medication. At some point in that month of November, she said she had even gone to the emergency department.
Did she tell you that she was having negative side effects with the medication that she had been prescribed by these doctors?
She did. She did not elaborate on the side effects, but she did say that multiple times.
So as close as you were for all those years working together, and you guys worked together through the COVID too, right?
Yes.
Is that a bonding experience for nurses?
Yes.
During that period of time, did you ever observe her? Was she a complainer? Like, would she come and complain to you, or was she pretty much private but would share her opinions of what was happening inside of her with you?
She was not a complainer about work or home or anything, but we were friends, and she did share more personal details with me.
And when she was working, would you guys be working on the night shift, or would you work in the afternoon, or
The night shift.
night shift?
Mm-hmm.
So did you ever see her go on her phone and access cameras to see what was going on at home with the babies or anything like that?
Yes.
Is that something that she would do on a regular basis, staying in touch with the family and looking at the cameras?
Yes.
Did she ever tell you why she was doing that?
Not specifically.
Okay. She, to your appearance or to your observation, appeared to be very concerned about her kids, right?
Yes.
Did you ever hear her complain that she wanted to leave behind the life that she had and basically move on, something better?
Oh, no. Lindsay, from the time I met her as a young woman, very much desired to be a mother and have a family.
And she did share with you that her mother-in-law actually referred her to somebody for some help as well, correct?
Yes.
In the holiday period, you guys stayed in touch again. You were texting her, and that's when she was, now we know she was in McLean Hospital, but she told you she was in an intensive program, right?
Correct.
In other words, she didn't say, I can't go to lunch with you guys because I'm in a mental hospital. She basically said, I'm treating my problems.
Correct.
To your years of dealing with Lindsay and seeing her with her kids and her family, what's your opinion of her as a mother?
Lindsay was a very loving, caring mother. This is exactly what she wanted to have met. She wanted a big family. She was happy to have her children close in age.
The next witness on the stand. And that's interesting. Yeah, you're right. Varying opinions. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your varying opinions. And thank you for sharing them so respectfully. We really do embrace all opinions here because I really do want to understand what everybody is feeling and thinking. So thank you. There's no one right opinion here. And really it was interesting, though. A lot of people I do see think that this was another good witness. For the defense, others disagree. But the next witness on the stand was Bethany Dicolibus, a licensed marriage and family therapist who also happened to be one of Lindsay's friends. So again, we are hearing from more of Lindsay's friends. Bethany said she had her own private practice and had been licensed for about 12 years. And right now she only did telehealth therapy. She explained that she met Lindsay as new moms in the same town. They lived in Duxbury, and their kids were in the same activities, music classes, gymnastics, play dates, all the typical mom life stuff. She said she saw Lindsay weekly, and when Sprague asked what Lindsay's demeanor was like, Bethany said she was active, she was engaged, she was friendly. She did not notice anything strange about her speech, nothing fast, nothing slowed down, no odd behavior. The only thing that she noticed over time was that Lindsay looked more tired. She clarified that the tiredness started after Callan was born. She still saw her weekly, still in the same places, still doing the same mom activities. And other though than Lindsay appearing tired, she didn't see any changes in Lindsay's personality or behavior. Bethany said that Lindsay told her she was having trouble sleeping, trouble falling asleep even when the kids were asleep, and that it became an ongoing struggle. And at first, Bethany thought, hey, this sounded like normal new mom exhaustion, the kind of thing she remembered experiencing herself. But as the weeks went on and Lindsay didn't improve, she started to worry. Sprague asked if Lindsay ever told her she was depressed or suicidal. She said no. If Lindsay ever said she had thoughts of harming anyone, no. If she ever mentioned hearing voices, no. Intrusive thoughts, no. She said Lindsay never appeared confused, never seemed like she was responding to something internal, never looked detached from reality. She did not see any trouble like with day-to-day functioning. They talked about how Lindsay had been looking for doctors and medication, and Bethany said she knew Lindsay was trying to get help, but she didn't remember specifics. She thought Lindsay eventually found a provider, and then they moved to a dinner in November. Bethany, Lindsay, and their friend Erin, they did these dinners every couple of months, a girls' night, right? Bethany said Lindsay was engaged in conversation, catching up about their kids and family. She said she made a point to check in about Lindsay's sleep and how she was feeling. Lindsay told her she had connected with some providers and felt hopeful that things could get better. Again, though, Bethany said Lindsay didn't mention suicidal thoughts, did not mention homicidal thoughts, did not mention hearing voices, did not mention intrusive thoughts, nothing like that. Then they moved to Cora's birthday party in January. Bethany saw her there too. She said Lindsay interacted normally with other parents and kids, and she herself talked with her. She didn't notice anything different about Lindsay's demeanor or behavior. She said Lindsay told her that sleep still had not gotten better. And then she said she felt like a zombie. But Bethany clarified that Lindsay didn't look like a zombie. She just looked tired. Sprague asked if she remembered telling police that Lindsay seemed fine at the party. Bethany didn't remember at first, so they showed her prior statements, and she agreed that yes, she had told police Lindsay seemed fine. On cross, Reddington started by confirming the obvious that she and Lindsay were good friends. She saw her often, she knew her well, and she had first-hand observations with what Lindsay looked like during those months. Bethany agreed. Yes, she noted Lindsay looked tired. Yes, Lindsay complained about being tired. Yes, she said she was anxious. Yes, she told her she felt like a zombie toward the end. Reddington asked if Bethany ever probed deeper, the way the prosecutor did, asking about symptoms and details. And Bethany said no. She didn't remember asking specific clinical questions. She wasn't evaluating Lindsay as a therapist. She was simply being a friend and listening. He asked her then what kind of mother Lindsay was. Take a listen. This is the kind of mother her friend explains Lindsay was.
How was she as a mother to your observations? Did she, as far as taking care of her kids, being happy with the kids? Did she not like her kids? What were your observations?
She loved her kids. She was warm, kind, consistent, loving.
And you actually were summoned to be here today by the district attorney's office, correct?
I was.
And you actually were interviewed by the state police. That's what she was questioning you about, page 11 and page 12. It was a recorded interview and things of that nature, right?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that although she may not have been telling you that she was seeing something that wasn't there, or hearing voices or drooling or acting in some unusual fashion while you guys were out having lunch, she did express to you that she was having some difficulties, correct?
She expressed that she was having difficulty, yes.
And would you say, knowing Lindsay as you did, that she was a type that was not really a complainer. She would not try to be a downer when you're out to lunch and having a good time with your friends and complain about her symptoms.
No.
But she did tell you that she was somewhat hopeful because she was seeing healthcare providers.
Yes.
And one of the things that they had asked you about, fair to say that when you talked to the police, you told them that you had spent a lot of time chatting about over this period of time that she had been having a lot of trouble sleeping, and that she referenced the postpartum period, right?
Yes.
And when you were talking to the police, the troopers, did they try to divert you? Did you feel that they were trying to get what your observations were, or did they want you to focus on their questions when they were questioning you?
Could you repeat that?
No, it's a bad question. Never mind. It's a bad question. I'm sorry. But nevertheless, you actually told them that you had been in touch with her. You'd been to the house, right?
I had been in touch with her, yes.
Yeah, and you knew Patrick.
Yes.
Other than socializing with your friends and with Erin and going out to lunches, you guys would also text, correct?
Yes.
And that's a way of keeping in touch with each other.
Yes.
And she would respond to your inquiries about fun things and about kids, right?
Yes.
But also, on occasion, you were concerned about her and you'd ask her how she's doing, right?
Yes.
And when you would ask her those things, she would tell you, for example, that she didn't know what medications were doing to her, but she in fact mentioned to you that the medications did not appear as though they were helping, and she still wasn't able to get any sleep.
Correct.
And further, in the statements that you gave to the police when they were asking you questions about your observations, she did indicate on a couple of occasions that she had obtained a therapist and a prescriber. And she would reference her relationship with Pat and tell you that Pat's great, things like that, right?
Yes.
You said, yes, I'm sorry, the door
Yes.
closed. So in those occasions, did she ever complain about Pat, or would they seem to be getting along pretty good?
They seem to be getting along great.
Was he supportive to your observations of her?
Yes.
Then when you went out to the other dinner, did you indicate to the police that in that conversation that her mother knows everything, or she told you my mom knows everything, and she's working it out as far as the therapist and the drugs, correct?
Yes.
And you still felt that it was readily apparent that she was struggling, right?
Yes.
Still having difficulty sleeping and being anxious, right?
Yes.
And as a friend, you were concerned, right?
I was concerned, yes.
Now, one of the questions the DA had asked you is that she was supposed to go back to work, and that she indicated that she had canceled that day to go back to work because she still wasn't sleeping well. Is that right?
She had, yes.
And those were her words, that she canceled going back to work because she still wasn't sleeping well.
Yes.
Did she ever talk to you about work? Did she seem to like her job as a labor and delivery nurse?
She loved it, as far as I knew.
And then you were at Cora's birthday party in January, is that correct?
Yes.
And that was the one that was at the trampoline park, right?
Yes.
And it was that time, and that would have been in January of 23, I believe, that it was on that time that you were concerned and you said, hey, are you getting any sleep? And she was like, no, I feel like a zombie, is what her words were, correct?
Yes.
Is that the last time you saw her?
Yes.
Thank you.
The next witness, Amy Bevans, and she explained that she's a licensed behavior analyst who specializes in early intervention for young children and with autism. And before that, she spent many years as a special education teacher. She said she'd known Lindsay for almost 29 years. They met as kids. They went through elementary school together, then stayed connected through middle school and high school. And even after they went off to different colleges, they kept in touch through texts, phone calls, and visits. So when Lindsay was in nursing school in Boston, Amy was living in Boston too, so they saw each other more often. She said they were always in contact. So in other words, we have on the stand now Lindsay's ride or die, right? This is, if we're answering the question, who's the real Lindsay Clancy. This is someone we want on the stand to understand. So when asked if Lindsay ever mentioned taking mental health medication during nursing school, she said she couldn't recall. She also didn't remember Lindsay talking about, any anxiety during that time. After nursing school, they continued to stay in touch. Amy moved back to Connecticut, but Lindsay visited home, and Amy occasionally traveled to Boston. They had a text chain between the two of them and a group chat with their childhood friends. She said they texted frequently, depending on what was going on in their life. She described Lindsay's general demeanor as, ready? Calm, nice, steady. Over the years, she never noticed changes in Lindsay's speech or behavior. After Lindsay had Cora, Amy said that she didn't notice any changes in Lindsay's demeanor, behavior, or speech. Same with Dawson. After she had Dawson, Lindsay told her that Dawson's delivery was more difficult and that she might need time to recover before thinking about a third child. But Amy didn't notice any changes in how Lindsay acted necessarily. Nothing caused her concern about Lindsay harming herself or anyone. And then after Callan was born, Amy still didn't notice any changes in Lindsay. She saw Lindsay in Connecticut in November 2022. Lindsay had traveled down alone and they met for breakfast with their group of friends. And Amy said that Lindsay seemed like her usual self. Nothing stood out. She recalled a text conversation in January of 2023. That is the horrible month. So she has a text conversation with her in January 2023, and that is a discussion about issues Lindsay was having. She doesn't remember the exact date, but that it was just one night and only a few days before January 24th. Oh. Lindsay told her that she had been taking a medication that caused dark thoughts, but she was tapering off of it and trying new medications that she hoped would remove those side effects and be more helpful. Lindsay didn't say what those dark thoughts were. Amy described her tone as hopeful, like Lindsay was moving in a positive direction. Lindsay never said she wanted to harm herself, never said she wanted to harm the children, never mentioned hearing voices, and didn't say anything else concerning. Amy also visited Lindsay at Spalding Rehabilitation in March of 2023. So 2 months after, a family member had reached out and asked if she had wanted to come. And so she traveled actually to Massachusetts and visited Lindsay there. Here's how that visit went 2 months after the
And what did you
children
do
were killed.
there with Lindsay that day?
We made small talk. We played Uno. It was a pretty basic visit.
When you say you made small talk, what did she talk about?
I remember her asking about my daughter. I remember her asking about any updates to life events for our friends. We talked about some hobbies that she was doing while at Spalding and then played a game.
Do you remember what hobbies she was doing at Spalding?
I can't recall specifically now.
At any point in time, did she mention the death of her children?
No,
At any point in time, did she break down in tears and cry about her children?
no.
What was her affect during that meeting?
I don't remember exactly. Pretty neutral, I would say.
Did she attempt at any point to harm herself?
No,
Did she ask you for help in harming herself?
no,
Did she talk about Cora, Dawson, or Callan at all?
no.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
So in cross-exam, Reddington again walked back through the length of Amy's friendship with Lindsay. It's kind of classic what he was going to do here. Almost 29 years, from grade school through high school into college, marriages, kids. He asked her to describe what Lindsay had always been like as a person. Amy said she knew her as a good person, a good friend, a good mom. They talked about all the times Lindsay and Amy had seen Lindsay with her children, from Cora all the way through Callan. Amy said she never saw anything out of the ordinary. Lindsay always appeared loving and attentive. Then the conversation went into Amy's visit with Lindsay at Spalding Rehab in March 2023. Reddington mentioned that arrangements had been made for her to get in, and he had helped with some of the red tape. Amy didn't recall that part, but confirmed she was able to visit Lindsay. She wasn't sure if it was early, mid, or late March, and she described Lindsay's physical condition during the visit. Lindsay was in a wheelchair, sitting upright the entire time. Amy did not ask why she was in the wheelchair because she already knew. Lindsay had been hospitalized since January 24th, and she knew her friend had been charged with killing her 3 children. She agreed that the topic was uncomfortable for anyone. They revisited the fact that Lindsay never cried during the visit and never brought up her children or the incident. Amy said that she and Lindsay stayed away from the subject entirely. She added that Lindsay's sister had told her not to bring it up, and she assumed that was based on guidance from mental health professionals or providers. Reddington asked how long the visit lasted. Amy said about 30 to 45 minutes. She asked if their friend group had gotten together in December 2022, but Amy didn't recall. He asked if she'd seen Lindsay after Thanksgiving that year. She didn't remember doing so. He asked if she remembered conversations from December about medications, but she didn't recall the exact timing. Reddington pointed out that she had been interviewed by state police in January 2023. She remembered that. He read back a portion of her statement where she told troopers that Lindsay knew she was open about mental health and had asked her if she'd ever tried certain medications. Amy agreed she had said that. She said the conversation happened over a text. She remembered Lindsay asking about an experience with Lexapro. She also remembered Lindsay mentioning difficulties about some of her medications. And then they moved to the moment Lindsay confided she was having dark thoughts. Amy said that came long after the medication conversation. She said it was the first time she'd heard anything concerning about Lindsay's mental health. And when asked when that was, she said toward the end of January 2023. It was over text. Lindsay explained what she thought dark thoughts were, or did not explain what she thought those dark thoughts were. And the next time Amy saw her after that was at the hospital. There was no redirect. And the next witness was Christopher William Clancy. Yeah, recognize that last name? Christopher William Clancy. It's Patrick's father, her ex-father-in-law, the grandfather to the 3 victims, Cora and Callan and Dawson. Now he's on the stand. And he explains he's been a plumbing contractor before retiring. When asked about meeting Lindsay for the first time, he explained that it happened years earlier at his parents' cottage. Patrick had brought her there before they were engaged. Eventually, they married and they had 3 children. Sprague moved into the period after Callan was born in May 2022, and he said that he had watched Lindsay with the baby and described her as very mothering, protective too, no different than any other mother with a newborn. When asked whether she was more protective of Callan than the other 2, he said that she had been the same way with each child when each child was little. He talked about how often he saw the family. They lived close by, but in Weymouth, then Duxbury, so the visits were regular. Sprague focused on mid-November 2022, 2 months before the killings. He remembered the family stopping by his house one weekend, maybe a Saturday or Sunday, just to say hi. Lindsay's demeanor that day was very good. Nothing about her behavior or speech seemed different. He next recalled seeing them at Thanksgiving at his daughter Laura's house in Hamilton. He interacted with Lindsay there. She seemed quiet, but still engaged with his daughters and her sister-in-law. But he did note she was quieter than usual. He remembered the coordinating shirts the women wore that day. During dinner, he noticed Lindsay trying to settle Dawson at the table, and Dawson was being silly, and she did grow a little frustrated. And he saw her taken by the arm to guide him into a seat. He made it clear, though, this was not harsh, right? She didn't hit him. She didn't do anything except for simply guide him. He stepped in to help, actually, Lindsay, because things were a bit chaotic with so many people, and he grabbed a plate for her, a thoughtful father-in-law. Sprague then moved to the weekend before Christmas. He believes he and his wife had stopped by the Clancy home. Lindsay's parents were also there, along with Lindsay and Patrick and the kids. He wasn't sure if there was a specific reason for the gathering, but thought he and his wife might have just been checking in. He knew Lindsay had been struggling at that point. She was not sleeping and didn't feel well, and she had gone to the emergency room where his wife worked. He thought they stopped by again a few nights before Christmas. He believed the same group was there. Lindsay's demeanor that night was okay, not terrible. He remembered previously describing her as being in good spirits, and he agreed that was accurate. Plans were made for Christmas Day. Everyone was going to attend Mass together, Catholic Mass. Lindsay, Patrick, the kids, and Christopher and his wife, Sue. So on Christmas morning, they went to the Clancy home before church. He said they had breakfast together. And Lindsay looked beautiful in her dress, and she seemed very happy. At church, the children behaved very well. After Mass, he spoke briefly with Lindsay outside. He didn't remember the exact words, but he recalled her saying she was glad she came and that she loved it. She was quiet, but she was happy. They hugged and they went their separate ways. He wasn't sure if he saw the family again after Christmas. He did not attend Cora's birthday party, which he understood was held at a trampoline park. Sprague asked about January 24th. He clarified that there were no formal plans to see family that night, but Lindsay and Patrick had asked them to come over. He and his wife had already had plans with Sue's sister, so they couldn't go, and they planned to visit on Friday instead. Sprague asked whether he and his wife had offered to take the kids overnight to give Lindsay and Patrick a break. He said yes. He mentioned it to his son, but the offer was declined. They returned briefly for Thanksgiving. He acknowledged that Lindsay she seemed quiet and at moments had a little blankness off to her, staring off, distracted. That's important. Staring past, right? Dissociative symptom right there. Almost nervous, though, he mentioned too. Other times she interacted normally. He said that Dawson could be silly and a handful, but he was a good boy. And finally, Sprague asked about a night of January 24th, that terrible night. And at some point that evening, he actually received a phone call from Patrick. Patrick's demeanor was terrible. Christopher and his wife left immediately and went to the hospital to be with him. Let's listen to cross-exam. We are making sure we're on the right one. And
Clancy,
here we go.
a couple of questions. You were summoned to be here by the DA, is that correct?
Correct.
And you gave statements to whoever wanted statements. You were very cooperative with the investigation, is that right?
Yes.
And being as you're the obviously grandfather and father of Pat, over the years from the time they were dating, engaged, married, kids, you and your wife were pretty close with both of them, were you not?
Yes.
Do you have an opinion as to how Lindsay was as a mother that you could see?
She was very, very good. She fed them great. She did a lot of things with them. They did like the all-American family.
And district attorney had asked you about Thanksgiving of 22, November 16th of 22. And she made reference, I think you had responded that she appeared to be quiet. And then she used the term, did you know about the struggles? Can you tell me what the struggles were? Do you know what she meant by that?
I knew.
Go to sidebar.
Sure, yeah.
I think I was asking you about the word, the struggles. And can you just tell the jury what was meant by the struggles?
I knew she was having a hard time sleeping. I knew she just didn't feel well. I know she had gone to the emergency room where my wife was working. Those types of struggles.
And just so, obviously for the record, your wife would be Sue?
Yes.
And she's a nurse, labor and delivery at South Shore?
Yes.
And did Lindsay confide, to your knowledge, yes or no, to your wife about some of her issues as a result of which your wife referred her to a person to speak to?
Yes.
Do you know who that person was?
I don't remember the person's name.
Okay, would that be the South Shore perinatal, I think is what it's called?
Yes.
Okay. And understanding that you're the father-in-law, would you agree that the two of you and Lindsay, had a pretty good relationship?
Yes, very good.
And you told us about November 16th and then Thanksgiving of 22 and then up until Christmas and then after Christmas, and the time frame actually right up to January 24th. You guys were supposed to get together that night, right?
Correct. Well, no, we weren't. We were asked to come to dinner that
But
night.
you had other plans.
We had other plans.
Okay. District Attorney asked you about, on a number of occasions, about the time at your home. I think it was on Thanksgiving when Dawson was acting a little rambunctious or silly, and that she guided him to his seat. Was she, to your opinion and what you could observe, did you believe that she was being abusive to him at all?
No.
And you know her mother and father as well, correct?
Yeah.
And the four of you, the in-laws from both sides, you and your wife, Sue, and Lindsay's mother and father, both were all kind of pulling together to try to help this young couple out during that time frame, right?
Yes.
And your son, Patrick, he was very concerned about his wife, was he not?
He was.
And he confided in you on a number of occasions.
Yes.
I'm sorry, sir. Thank you.
That wrapped up the cross-exam. There was no redirect from the prosecution. The next witness was Kyle Carney. He said he worked in finance and was married to Sarah Carney. They had children, and his family knew the Clancy family through his long friendship with Patrick. He met Patrick in 2009 when they were in college together, and they stayed friends after graduating. Eventually, both families ended up living in Duxbury at the same time. Kyle said he met Lindsay about 12 years earlier before she and Patrick were married and continued to know her as they built their family. While living in Duxbury, he saw Patrick and Lindsay roughly every other month. He interacted with Lindsay during those gatherings and described her demeanor as kind and caring. He never noticed any significant changes in her behavior or demeanor. Nothing changed after Cora was born, nothing after Dawson. When asked about the period after Callan was born, Kyle said he spent time with the Clancy family that summer. He remembered beach dinners, family gatherings at the beach, eating together and spending time. He could not recall exactly how often, but said it happened at least monthly. He went fishing with Patrick during that time through the summer of 2022. He did not notice any differences in Lindsay's demeanor or behavior. He continued seeing Patrick through the fall of 2022 and early January 2023, again, about once a month. Buckingham then focused on Sunday, January 22nd, 2023. Kyle said he hosted a small gathering at his home, and Patrick and Lindsay came over with Cora and Dawson. Callan stayed home with Lindsay's parents. The purpose was simply to socialize. It was a nice day. Kyle had a fire going in the backyard to burn brush, and he actually thought it would be good to get the kids outside, right? So he described Lindsay's demeanor that day as quieter than usual. He had previously said the weekend was fairly normal, that Lindsay had always been a little tough to read, honestly, a bit quiet. It's interesting to hear, but that the conversation they had in the kitchen, it felt normal. He agreed it had been a perfectly normal afternoon and a really nice day. Nothing about her behavior or demeanor seemed out of the ordinary. He had no trouble communicating with her. The family stayed for a few hours, and he confirmed again that it had been a normal, just great day. No cross-exam. The final witness of the day was Sergeant Andrew Ciaccio of the Massachusetts State Police. He said he had been with the state police since December 2013 and had spent the last 5 years assigned to the Plymouth County State Police Detective Unit. His current rank, again, sergeant. So Buckingham brought him back to January 24th, 2023. He confirmed that he was working with the detective unit and the DA's office at the time. He remembered being called into the investigation in Duxbury. He wasn't the case officer, but many troopers were assigned different tasks, and he went first to Summer Street and then quickly sent elsewhere for follow-up. And one of the assignments that night was the CVS in Kingston. He went there to obtain surveillance video because investigators believe Patrick Clancy had been at that location earlier in the evening. At the store, he spoke with the manager, Allison Krause. We've heard from Allison on the stand, and accessed the surveillance system. He checked the timestamp by comparing the live feed to his department-issued phone and found no discrepancies. He confirmed that the video showed Patrick arriving and leaving. He was then sent to a second location, the 3V restaurant in Plymouth. Again, he went to obtain surveillance video because Patrick was believed to have visited there as well. He spoke with 2 employees, accessed the video, checked the timestamps, and found them accurate. The footage showed Patrick arriving, paying for a bag of food, and leaving through the front door. He later received copies of both surveillance videos and brought them back to the state police video office. And as part of his follow-up, he used the Maps application on his iPhone to estimate the travel time between Patrick's home and the 2 locations. And he said it provided distance and times, though it didn't account for traffic or how long maybe Patrick spent inside each place. He also conducted witness interviews, including Paula Musgrove, Lindsay's mother, and Elaine Flattery, a former nanny. He interviewed employees from CVS and was present for many of the interviews with first responders from multiple towns. And then on June 12th, 2023, he applied for and received a search warrant for the home on Summer Street. And while receiving crime scene photos, someone noticed possible blood stains on the outside of the house that had not been swabbed on the night of the incident. So he consulted forensic scientists at the crime lab about whether biological material could still be collected months later. And then after those conversations, he applied for the warrant. Swabs and shingles were collected, and he was present during that process. So then on May 15th, 2024, he goes to Tewksbury State Hospital to collect DNA from Lindsay. He described the procedure using a foam-tipped swab to collect saliva from the inside of both cheeks, transferring it to a collection card, letting it dry, and sealing the kit. He said he performed the swabbing himself, but there were other officers present. The sample was placed in temporary evidence at the DNA's office and was later sent to the state police crime lab. Well, he also sought search warrants for Facebook and Meta, including a parenting group called Attachment Parenting for Littles. Let's listen to some of that.
Now, another thing that you did in this investigation sometime later was seek search warrants to Facebook, or what's known as Meta, correct?
Correct.
As well as a particular Facebook group called Attachment Parenting for Littles.
Correct.
As a result of that warrant, did you receive data back from Facebook?
I did.
And were you able to confirm a Facebook page in the name of Lindsay Marie Clancy?
Yes.
Were you also able to confirm that there's a particular post by the person named Lindsay Marie Clancy, or the Facebook page Lindsay Marie Clancy, on May 5th, 2021, to the Attachment Parenting for Littles group?
Yes.
I'm just going to approach. May?
You may.
I have no problem with the phone.
No objection? Okay.
I'm just going to show you a document. Is that familiar to you?
Yes.
And is this the Facebook post posted by Lindsay Marie Clancy on May 5th, 2021?
It is.
I'll move to it. It says the next exhibit.
No objection? That may be admitted.
Sergeant Cacchio, just showing you what's now been marked as Exhibit 217 on the screen. Is that a Facebook post from the Attachment Parenting for Littles Facebook group?
Yes.
And through the information you received from the search warrant return, you were able to locate the content of this post in the records for the attachment Parenting for Littles and confirm that it also appeared to be authored by Lindsay Marie Clancy, correct?
Correct.
Or by the Facebook page of Lindsay Marie Clancy.
Yes.
And fair to say it reads, hello, lovely parents. I'm looking for some advice, solidarity, ideas, something, anything. I'm truly finding my 19-month-old to be the most difficult human I've ever encountered. I mean that with all love in my heart, but I honestly cannot make it through a day without getting so frustrated with him. He's not my first child, so not to compare, because I know that every child is different, but just for background, this isn't my first rodeo. Every single thing with him is a battle, and it has been this way for a while, since he was maybe 8 months old. I really try to pick my battles and only do what's completely necessary, but I mean everything, getting out of his crib in the morning and going downstairs, changing his diaper, getting him dressed, getting him in his seat to eat, getting him in the car seat, getting him out of the car seat, putting on his jacket and shoes to go outside, having him come inside when it's time, going to sleep for his nap, and at night, he fights me every step of the way with all these normal daily activities. It constantly feels like I have to force him to do these things, which feels so wrong, but he is always fighting me and crying about doing these very normal things. You recall seeing that message in the records.
I do.
And fair to say there was some comments to the records and also an acknowledgement by the person with the Facebook page, Lindsay Marie Clancy, thanking the contributors for their advice.
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Reddington.
Which is the Parenting for Littles post by Lindsay, correct?
Correct.
And this was back in May of 2021?
Yes.
And she was talking about her son, who at the time was 19 months old?
That's correct.
Now, as a state police officer, you know how to investigate things, right?
Yes.
You guys must have turned things inside out to find out if Lindsay Clancy was ever abusive to her son, Dawson, right?
That's correct.
Found nothing, did you?
No.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Anything on that?
No, thank you.
Thank you, sir. You may step down.
Yep, as you see there, Commonwealth had nothing further. The judge excused the witness. And then the judge then turned to the jury, explaining that he needed to conduct a hearing with the lawyers and that it would take some time. So they were dismissed for the day. And during the motions hearing, Reddington reminded the judge that this was a murder trial, that the discovery was massive, to say the least, massive, and that the Commonwealth had an army of investigators, chemists, detectives, and officers at their disposal. Meanwhile, he joked he had only himself and his son Patrick who helped him get coffee. He explained that the Commonwealth was objecting to his expert witnesses, claiming they needed more time to prepare cross-examination, and he insisted that was unfair. These experts weren't bringing anything new. They were simply giving opinions based on the Commonwealth's own evidence, the medical records, the photos, the x-rays, the testimony they had already heard. He went through each expert one by one. The emergency medicine physician, his testimony would mirror what South Shore doctors already said about Lindsay's injuries, the cuts to her wrists and neck, and that, in his opinion, they were consistent with a legitimate suicide attempt. Nothing new, nothing secret, nothing. The Commonwealth needed extra time to prepare. And then he turned to the pathologist he'd worked with for over a decade. She would testify about Lindsay's Jefferson fracture, right? The kind of fracture people get when they dive headfirst into shallow water or fall from a tall height. He said Brigham and Women's Records already referenced that fracture, that she would also testify that bruises on the children were consistent with EMT handling any medical intervention, not inflicted by Lindsay. And finally, he turned to Dr. Condi. He said that Dr. Condi had signed an affidavit based entirely on medical records both sides had possessed for years. And Condi would testify about the appropriateness of Lindsay's psychiatric treatment, the SSRIs, antipsychotics, benzodiazepines, and whether those prescriptions made sense given her symptoms. Reddington argued that excluding him would gut the defense. And he told the judge that if he had failed to get written reports earlier because of his trial schedule, that shouldn't deprive Lindsay of her defense. He said the Commonwealth's argument was disingenuous and that justice requires allowing these experts to testify. The judge began asking questions, focusing first on Dr. Condi. He pointed out that the affidavit leaned heavily on a standard of care, which was a civil concept. He wasn't sure that that belonged in a criminal case, more of a civil case, right? He said causation mattered more, meaning whether the treatment contributed to what happened. Reddington said Condi could simply testify about the appropriateness of the treatment, not standard of care, and offered to have him revise his report. The judge said he needed to review whether Condi's opinions even duplicated other experts, what other experts had already disclosed. And then the Commonwealth responded. Sprague argued that Condi wasn't a toxicologist and that cross-examination required more than having the same records. It required time to research the expert's background, publications, prior testimony. He said the disclosure was late, only a week before trial, and that Condi's opinions overlapped with 3 other defense witnesses already scheduled to testify about Lindsay's treatment and medications. Sprague then addressed another doctor, Dr. LaPasada, and she said her report was only 2.5 pages, didn't list what material she relied on, and was disclosed too late for the Commonwealth to obtain its own expert. She said if they had known the defense planned to argue Jefferson fracture mechanics, they could have secured a trauma expert to rebut it. Well, the judge pushed back, noting that the mechanism of Lindsay's fall, whether she went out head first or hung from the window, it had already been raised throughout the trial, and this part was actually pretty interesting to me, because there has been a lot of discussion of whether the state is trying to say that Lindsay faked the suicide attempts or not, right? Like, that's what we're all kind of gathering, is it not? So take a listen.
I mean, the Commonwealth has at least inferred through their case that this was not a serious suicide attempt, right? I mean, and there's questions about whether or not somebody's hanging outside the window or not. And so why wasn't this an issue that the Commonwealth could have anticipated would come up?
The position of the Commonwealth isn't that it wasn't a serious suicide attempt. It's that the methods that were chosen were insufficient to achieve the goal. And the reasons for that, we would argue in our closing. I don't think we have to disclose that theory at this point, but we've never said it wasn't a serious suicide attempt. We've never said it was a fake suicide attempt. What we've endeavored to develop from the testimony is that the methods that were chosen were methods that would be unsuccessful, but we're not saying it wasn't a serious attempt. And I think the reasons for that will become clearer when the doctors give their testimony. But it's our position that she was attempting to kill herself that night, and there are various reasons and factors where she was unsuccessful in killing herself, but successful in killing her children.
But there's been all kinds of testimony regarding, it seems to be a dispute of whether or not she's hanging from the windowsill or goes out head first. There's some testimony that's been raised, even with the blood experts, things that she may have been hanging from the windowsill. Dr. LaPasada, it seems what they're seeking is those injuries are consistent with somebody who lands on their head.
So would the court allow us to call a witness who's not on our witness list to rebut that evidence?
Yeah, I would consider that. Sure.
I would have no problem.
Yeah.
Weird, right? I mean, we've been spending days discussing whether or not her wrist, are superficial, and whether she was like hanging out of the window. It was so weird for them to be like, no, her suicide attempt was real. It was serious. Like, what the? I don't know about you guys. I'm confused. Let me know what you think. But I was like, WTF, honestly. The judge ultimately said he was inclined to allow the testimony that the injuries were consistent with landing on one's head, and he would allow the Commonwealth to call a rebuttal expert if they wished. Sprague asked for a list of the material she relied on, and Reddington said it was simple: South Shore and Brigham and Women's records already in evidence. And then they moved to the third expert, Dr. Volkovich. Sprague objected to his report, saying it wasn't signed and didn't clearly outline the basis for his opinions. The judge said he was more concerned about whether the opinion was admissible. He said that Volkovich could testify about the characteristics of the injuries, how deep the cuts were, what they looked like, but he would not allow him to state outright that Lindsay's injuries approved a suicide attempt. He said he needed to review Volkovich's language more closely. So before ending, Reddington mentioned that Dr. LaPosada was working with Drake Laboratories on a computer animated display showing Lindsay's fall, the neck injuries, the vertebrae movement. He didn't have it yet, but he wanted to disclose it early to avoid objections. The judge explained he would need to review it once it was produced and give the Commonwealth a chance to respond. Sprague argued that unlike the 3D house diagram, which had been disclosed early, this animation was new and would require time for the Commonwealth's expert to review. The judge said he wasn't committing either way until he saw it. And finally, the judge summarized where he stood. He said he would review Condi's report overnight. He was inclined to allow LaPosada to testify that the injuries were consistent with a head-first fall. He would review Volkovich's language and decide what portions were admissible. He would allow the Commonwealth to call rebuttal experts if needed and would issue rulings tomorrow. And that is where we landed, issuing those rulings tomorrow. I have a feeling tomorrow is going to be a very big day in court. I have a feeling there might be more autopsies. Who knows? Who knows? I'm personally confused with what the prosecution is trying to do. I don't know what you think. Again, I really, really appreciate everyone's opinions in chat. We follow these trials openly and listening to all the evidence. Yeah, wow, what a day. I can't believe, honestly, what they're covering each day. It's very overwhelming. Now, we're going to do something a little different right now on this live. I want to give Grayson a little bit of time to talk about her brother and her loss and what these past, it's been 24 hours, 48 hours. I don't know. It's all a blur, honestly. It's the reason we didn't go live last night. Have been like, I want her to have the chance to share about her brother. She wants to do this. I'm going to give her this chair. I'm going to mute it for a little bit and maybe turn off the camera while we get situated, because there's not a lot of room where we are. I'm going to have to essentially like crawl over a desk and she's going to get in. So I'll turn off the camera while we do that. But thank you everybody for your support of Grayson. For those new to our channel, this channel was started and run by my husband, Dr. John Matthias, a criminal psychologist. And I'm clearly Lauren, the face that's most often on Hidden True Crime. I was a former television reporter. And after we had our trial, after we had our channel for like 3 years, we did it on our own. It was time for a producer. And that producer, we have been so lucky to have found Grayson. She's amazing. She does so much behind the scenes. And so when tragedy struck her life early yesterday morning in the middle of the night, it's been really overwhelming for her. And I want her to share a little bit about her brother, and she would like to do that, and she'd like to share. And your kindness has actually been so uplifting to her. So stay with us 1 second. We're going to swap places, and Grayson's going to sit here now.
There we go. Can you hear me? I think you guys can. I won't cry, but I just wanted to get on here and say thank you guys. So many of you guys have sent messages of support to my family. It's been really difficult. I asked Lauren if I could actually come on just to say thank you for all of your guys' support. My brother I was the closest to him out of all of my siblings. We were very, very close from a very young age, and he lived a really fun life. I'll show some photos of him. He was always doing crazy activities, and actually, a couple years ago, my mom told him, "Hey, you're getting older. You gotta tone it down a little bit. Don't be so crazy and reckless." And he just looked at her and he said, "Mom, I'm gonna die young, so I'm gonna live now." And that's how he felt. And so, unfortunately, he was right. None of us expected it. Our family is obviously going through a lot. A lot of people have asked questions of why I haven't rushed home. I just wanted to address that super quick. My brother died out of town. He was on a road trip with his dog. And when that happens, the family has to go retrieve them. And so my parents are actually out of town dealing with everything that comes with that. They got our dog today and took her to go be cremated. And I actually just talked to my dad, and he said that brought them a lot of closure with our sweet dog Chesney. And then, yeah, he's the one on the back right with the hat. And then my sorry, grief is weird. I feel like I lose train of thought every 5 seconds. So my brother, and there's a lot of laws where he was found on how they have to do things. And so regardless of the fact that it was a car accident, there has to be an autopsy. And so my family's up there waiting. My mom and dad are up there waiting on that. And then my parents have made the decision that they would like to have him cremated up there before they come home. So that kind of has left me in the interim, just figuring out what I want to do. And for me, I just wanted life to be as normal as possible because it's not normal anymore, or at least my normal. And so I plan to just continue to do what makes me feel good. I actually didn't work a lot today. I laid in bed most of the day and talked to some friends and talked to my parents every little bit and my siblings. And yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. Once my family gets home at some point, unsure when, I'll take some time off and head out for a little bit to be with my family. But for now, I just wanted to say thank you guys. The support has really meant a lot. I didn't expect it. I mean, nobody expects to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to, their entire world being shattered. But yeah, I'll explain what happened. It was crazy. I sleep with my phone on every night. It drives everybody crazy whoever spends the night with me, any of my friends, sleepovers. I always keep my phone on, and I've always said it's because if somebody needs me, I need to be able to get them, answer it. And it was the one night I didn't keep my phone on. And at 2:10 in the morning, I got a crash alert. I love my brother so much. He's such a free spirit and funny. And it said, "Jackson Yours got in a crash, and you're getting this because Pimp Daddy has listed you as his emergency contact." That's my brother for you. And so I get this. I was sleeping. I didn't see it. And my family was texting me and calling me. They got this as well. It took them about 2.5 hours till they got the, my dad saw the phone start moving to the sheriff's department, and he was like, "I never thought I'd be praying that my kid had gotten a DUI." And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. The sheriff then called and told my parents what had happened. They kept trying to call. They couldn't get a hold of me. I think that was freaking them out even more because my phone is always on and everybody knows that. And then they started calling Lauren, and Lauren answered after I think the third call. and she came and woke me up and gave me the phone, and it was just the worst moments of my entire life. It was horrible, horrifying. So I think Lauren's probably a little bit traumatized too. There was a lot of screaming involved. And Jackson and both of our family dog Chesney both did not survive. I asked the officer. After I got collected, I called the officer and asked, and they believe it was on impact, which I'm grateful for. And I think that would be the best way if this was how he had to die. It's just on impact. And Jackson was fun. Jackson was a creative. Jackson was an artist. Jackson was a surfer. Jackson was a skateboarder. Jackson lived in a school bus that he, I'll show you. He lived in a school bus that he renovated into his home, and he loved it. And that's him snowboarding off of his school bus. And this is, I'll show you guys another video of him.
We're on it, back at it, round 2, baby. Round 2. Yeah. Let's go, let's go.
And I'll show you guys one more that I love.
You look like yourself, but you're somebody else. Only it ain't on the surface.
Yeah, Jackson was 27. It was a single car crash. We believe he probably may have fallen asleep at the wheel, or just it was so dark. And all we really know is that the car just rolled and rolled and rolled. And yeah, he died on impact. I talked to him just 2 hours before normal sibling call. I was helping him figure out dog daycare for Chesney, and he always called me when he needed help. And he always told me, "You're my younger sister, but you're my older sister." And so I was helping him figure out dog daycare, and he texted me. He said, "I got it. I can figure it out." And I was already figuring it out, so I didn't text him back. I was like, I'll text him back when I've got the plan settled. So he just knows, don't worry about it. Just follow my lead. But we never got there. So yeah, it's difficult. I feel like life will never be the same. But I just wanted to come on and thank you guys so much. The support has been a lot for our family. The one thing that's been really cool is we did not realize how many friends Jackson had. Jackson lived on a mountain in California in his school bus that he loved. And there was a post yesterday that somebody made, and there's hundreds of comments on it of people saying, "I met Jackson here. Jackson and I did this. We did this. Jackson filmed my gender reveal with my husband. Jackson did this. Jackson was always smiling. Jackson was the best ski lift person." And so our family didn't realize how much of an impact Jackson had made until now, hearing so many people tell us that how much they loved him. In a few nights, my family's going up to the mountain, and we're going to give his snowboarding gear to his friends there so they can continue that on. It's what he would want them to have. And yeah, as a family, we'll figure out how to move forward. I don't know much what else to really say. It's just been, I'm kind of in shock. He was my best friend, and I went through some messages today at lunch. I was just scrolling and looking at some voice memos, and there was a message last year. It was, the irony of it kind of haunts me. He said, "I hope you have a great day today. Don't add or subtract to the population." Lauren's laughing. Don't add or subtract to the population. Don't do anything that will get you in jail. And don't end up dead in a ditch. And don't make me call a lawyer to get you out of jail. And the irony of the ditch thing has definitely hit me. Somebody asked, did we fight when we were younger? Yeah. Bad. Jackson and I fought bad, but we were also two peas in a pod and we protected each other from everybody. So yeah, it'll be rough for a while, I think. Grief is weird. I don't know. You hear about like finding out somebody loses something and you always feel so bad, but when it hits you, it's just a different level. Yeah, Jesse said sounds like he had a wicked sense of humor. That he did. He was hilarious. And he was just fun and funny and really cool. So yeah, it's hard to imagine what life will be like without him. But my everyone's with people that they care about right now, which is good. My parents, out of all the things that could have happened, where he passed away was an hour from where their best friends live. And so when they called to their best friends, they were actually going to go on a trip and they canceled. And they've spent every minute with my parents up there figuring it all out. So we're really grateful for that. My sister has a family of her own. My other sister already had a pre-planned trip with her best friend. And so that's been helpful. And then I'm kind of just staying where I'm comfortable right now. And, I'll head home when my parents get home, but I didn't. A lot of people were like, why isn't she on a plane? Why isn't she on a plane? And to be honest, the emergency room doc yesterday, when he saw us, he said, do not put her on a plane today. Getting on a plane and flying 7 hours would have probably been the worst thing that could have happened. Lauren took me to the ER because I had a really, really, really bad panic attack when I found out. And so, yeah, my parents are grateful for Lauren. They've said that they are grateful that they don't have to, worry about what's going on with me. They're calling me and checking in, and I as them, but all of us are just kind of doing our own things. And there's so much when somebody dies that we didn't realize has to be done. And so, yeah, they're grateful that I'm just in a safe spot for now. And so are my sisters, and then we'll all meet up for some family time and a memorial. And, yeah, but, anyways, I'll read some comments. Jackson was just, I think I just keep going back to Jackson was so cool because he was so cool. He always said that he told my mom I'm going to die early. He always told us that, it was just, and we'd be like, whatever. I mean, he was reckless. I was a little worried. I mean, he'd put on his Instagram story that he went 104 on the side of the road by himself. So I was always a little worried, like, okay, he didn't put others in danger, but he did his thing and he just lived life like there was literally no tomorrow. And as weird as this may sound, I think our families found a lot of comfort in the fact that Chesney was with him. We're horrified that we lost Chesney as well, but Chesney was his best friend. There's a movie called A Dog's Purpose, and we keep talking about that, and Jackson's purpose was Chesney and Chesney's purpose was Jackson. And my mom was telling me that recently, so Jackson had autism and some other struggles, and Chesney was kind of like a service dog for Jackson. Jackson trained her to do stuff for him and help him. And he would take her to the movies, and she loved when people would come to pet her. But what she didn't like was when people would sit by them. And she would growl a little so they would move. She was never going to do anything, but she'd growl a little so they would move. So she could just be alone with Jackson. That was what she wanted to do. And he would take her to restaurants and she'd lay under the table and he'd take her to work with him. And that dog went everywhere with him. So yeah, we're sad. We're heartbroken. It's been beyond devastating and tragic, and losing your best friend is never easy, but I think we'll get through it. And yeah, somebody said that's so sweet. They passed together, no soldier left behind. That's how I feel too. So anyways, I think that's all. Lauren, thank you for everything. You've been a really big support to me. A lot of you probably know this. Lauren lost her brother last year, and it was really hard for her. And so to be with somebody who just lost a sibling last year has been really helpful for me because somebody else knows the grief I'm experiencing. And losing a sibling is beyond anything I could have ever fathomed. So it's been helpful for me to be with somebody who understands what I'm feeling. I didn't show a picture of Chesney, and I would show one. Will you hand me my computer?
Yeah.
I do want to show a photo of Chesney. No. I'll show you guys a picture of Chesney. She was really sweet. We always joked that she was the 5K dog because we got Chesney, and Chesney was she was an expensive silver lab, and then she was even more expensive because she needed a lot of training to get where she got. And so that was always our joke. Chesney, the 5K dog. Where's this photo? 2835. I'm going to show you guys a photo of Chesney really quick. 28. Oh. Here is Chesney and Jackson together. Chesney was a silver lab. So that's Chesney and Jackson together. And then there's one of Chesney and Lily. Lily is my dog, and Lily and Chesney were best friends. So Lily, although won't understand when I tell her, I'm sure she'll pick up on the fact that something's strange when we go to my parents and, Chesney's not there. Here's Lily and Chesney. So, anyways, all of that to say, thank you guys for your love. Thank you for your support. We plan to do a live show tomorrow, but Lauren and I kind of decided that if I don't feel up to it, it's just not going to happen. So, yeah. And next week, who knows what next week will look like. She probably might do some shows on her own, or maybe we take time off. I don't know. We'll just decide as I decide what's best for our family, and seeing my parents and figuring out everything that there is. So for now, I'm going to take off. Lauren's already done for the night. She's eating a snack. And tomorrow we will bring an update. So, shh, she's coughing. I'll do our sign off, and we're so grateful for you guys, and thank you for all your love and support, and we will see you guys tomorrow.